Welcome to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast show where we talk about life, death, and experiences somewhere in between. My name is Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and I welcome you to join me as I talk to everyday people with not so everyday experiences. You may also wish to join the conversation on the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page or access additional VIP content as a premium subscriber via Patreon. For just a couple of dollars a month, you can get an early access to episodes, additional bonus content, and your chance to connect with my guests. To do so, simply visit patreon.com/Kirsty Salisbury. Let's talk near death.
I went straight down and I went headfirst onto a concrete bike path. I cracked 5 discs, 8 broken ribs. I broke my pelvis in 4 places. The x-ray looked like a jigsaw puzzle. I'm bleeding inside now. But in that moment was all of eternity. In that moment was the divine. It was everything. It was the source, the essence of being.
Welcome back to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Rex Finfgeld. Rex had a near-death experience in 2011 when he fell 26 feet and landed headfirst onto concrete. That sounds painful. Since then, he's been on a mission to do his part to bring positive change into the world. Rex is a musician, a presenter, and he's all about connecting the world through writing, music, dance, and video. Rex is also the author of the Gravity series, with book 1, My Experiment with Gravity, now available, and books 2, I Never Die, a 21st Century Book of the Dead, and book 3, Envisioning God, Dreaming the Ultimate Dream in the Process, in the pipeline and nearly ready to be released to the world. So Rex, welcome to Let's Talk Near Death. What a journey you've been on. Tell us a little bit about how this all happened.
Regarding the actual near-death experience itself, I mean, there's just so many ways we can go, but we'll just starting with the story of what brought me to the NDE. I'm a martial artist, and I have been pretty much my whole adult life. And I used to fight, and I've actually spent a lot of time in like nightclubs and event security, and in addition to being a DJ and everything else. But anyways, it was a training day, and this is 9 years ago now, and one of our main classes with my teacher, he's an 84-year-old, true, incredible master. I mean, everything he does for the combat, he does for healing. It's an art of moving energy, so it's really perfect for me right now. But at the time, we were training on Sunday mornings at 7 a.m., and at that point, I was a nightclub and concert promoter. I did events all the time, and so I was typically working Saturdays. Some of my events went till 5 in the morning. So you can kind of run it all together. My event's ending at 5 in the morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning, and I've got to be at training at 7 a.m. So back then I didn't sleep. I would literally go to training with no sleep. I used to joke it was kind of like my Navy SEAL training time. I'm here in America, so I'm making an association, I guess, like an American like the top military branch. But the SEALs are known for this crazy intense training, very sleep deprived kind of training, and that's what I felt like back then. So anyways, I train, and these are grueling training sessions. Especially back then, the way we trained was really old world, really intense. Then I'd get home, and once the adrenaline rush would wear off, I'd fall asleep. I'd go to bed, sleep for 4, 5, 6 hours because I hadn't slept that night. And then for some reason, this particular day, we had a great training session. This was 2011, and it was August. And it was crazy. I mean, we just had one of those Sunday mornings, and I got back home, and I was as wide awake as could be, and I thought, I'm going to go for a run. So I went down my favorite little bike path that I went running on all the time, and it was just not real long. Went to about a 3-mile run or so, and just thinking, okay, come on, get myself tired. I got to get home and go get some sleep. I've always climbed. I live in a state in the U.S. called Colorado, and Colorado's known for the mountains. The Rocky Mountains. We have beautiful Rocky Mountains here. So climbing rocks, mountainsides has been one of my things for years. In addition, to martial arts, it's a great way to cross-train and build strength without being real big and bulky. So anyway, climbing trees, since I'm in the city, we're right, kind of just west of the foothills a little bit here. So it's not like I have a lot of that around me where I live in the city. So I climb trees. This particular spring, it was a really dry spring, and I was up in a tree called a cottonwood. They're really beautiful trees. They get pretty good size, and I didn't know this at the time, but we had a really dry spring, and apparently cottonwoods dry out. The branches become very, very brittle. And I was up in the tree. I ran my 3-mile run. I was coming back, went by one of my favorite trees, and went up for a climb. 2 branches broke. One branch let go. I tried to grab onto the branch, feverishly not to fall, and it let go. And then I went to grab onto a second one because my hands were really chewed up. When I was in the hospital, they were just completely chewed up. But the second branch broke. And I actually remember this. This part I actually remember. A lot of this memory is very, very spotty. And that's why I went down. I didn't slip. I mean, when I was climbing, I always went slowly. I've never rushed. I've never been speedy about that thing because I was very, very acutely aware of this possibility. But yeah, the branches broke. I went straight down, and I went headfirst onto a concrete bike path. Now, the bike path is about maybe, 6 or 7 feet wide. I've got grass on either side of the bike path. There's a creek another 15, 20 feet from that. So, but no, I went splat right on the concrete. My whole body hit the concrete. And then I landed on the left, and I think I hit someone at an angle because then I slammed down the left side of my body because I broke 20 bones in addition to the brain injury, and all the bones I broke were on the left side of my body.
Yeah.
I cracked 5 discs, 8 broken ribs. I broke my pelvis in 4 places. The X-ray looked like a jigsaw puzzle of my pelvis. It was when I first finally saw the X-ray when they first brought me in. But yeah. Then, of course, I had massive internal bleeding from the broken ribs. So this is where it gets there's a lot about this that's very miraculous, if you will. And this is one of the things about the story that's amazing to me is that at the time, like I said, it was kind of a cold spring day here in Colorado. There was hardly anybody in the park. And I just fell out of this tree, and I'm laying on this concrete bike path. Okay, when I was running, I think I passed one person on the path. I'm bleeding inside now. And there happened to be a couple of high school girls just walking through the park, I'm guessing probably 75, 100 yards away from me. They weren't even that close to me. They just happened to be looking my way when I fell. And they called the authorities, got the first responders there right away. Otherwise, I would have died on the path. If nobody would have called, for the first responders, I don't think I would even made it an hour. I had such severe bleeding inside. I would probably died on the path. So and then in addition to that, of course, the first responders arrive, and this is crazy. I landed head first on concrete. I wasn't even out. I hadn't even gone out yet. I was still awake. And actually even remember this. Just again, it's spotty, but I remember arguing with the first responders and telling them I wanted to go home. I didn't need to go to the hospital, and they couldn't make me go.
With 20 broken bones.
My elbows backwards and disfigured, and bones are sticking. I was bad. I could just imagine the scene when those poor high school girls had to see me like that. Oh gosh, just teenagers had to see something like that. And but anyway, apparently at some point between that moment and going to the hospital, I went into deep shock and lapsed into a coma where I stayed for 5 days. And some point in the coma, and this is what's really crazy. People ask me all the time about, well, how long was it? It's like, I don't feel like I was in a space or place, or however you want to refer to this, a vibrational reality where space-time was relevant. I don't want to say it didn't exist. It just didn't exist in this linear moment by moment by moment fashion. So I didn't really have a concept of like how long was I there, because when I explain it, I say, it really was just a moment. It was when I think about it, it was just a moment. But in that moment was all of eternity. In that moment was the divine. It was everything. It was the source, the essence of being. And you hear NDEers, and being one yourself, I imagine you relate to this. And this is the one thing we hear almost every NDEer say, is that feeling of the deepest, most pure, but also most like delicate, most innocent love. I mean, childlike innocence, tenderness, softness in the love. I mean, even those words are just not even doing justice to the warmth. Again, this just aren't words in the English language that didn't really do justice to this. But also in that space, and realizing that I wasn't, like I said, I'm going to put it like this: I wasn't feeling loved. I wasn't loving. I was love. I was living in unto itself. This is truth. This is true source. This is true essence. I was love. And understand as I say this, and I want to qualify this right now, this is the source of every single one of us. I'm not saying this because I'm so different or anything like that. It's nothing to do with that. I just got to a part of that which is a part of everything, all of us, the all. But also when I was here, it wasn't that it was just alive, okay? and I felt the life. But the thing is, it was life itself. It was life itself. This was spirit, the essence of spirit, if you will, that which gives life to everything. That's what this was. This was life. It wasn't alive. It was life. And then this is where, I mean, this is where it gets, of course, and from the humanistic standpoint, the part that's Rex, this is where it gets kind of crazy. The mind aspect of this. Now, this wasn't just a collection of thoughts. It wasn't thinking. It was thought. It was the very thought of what am I, which is what's crazy, because I mean, this is where the experience comes in. So in this thought, in the desire to want to know, came the experience. So essentially, this is the mind, the imagination of this divine being with which we are all a part, that is a part of all of us, that gives rise to the very creation with which we are all experiencing. You know, Jonathan Hagelin, who's a theoretical physicist, he was in the film What the Bleep, which is where I first saw him, describes the universe as a thought universe. At the time, I didn't understand it. It was before my NDE. I thought it was really fascinating. What a beautiful, eloquent way to describe the universe, a thought universe. I don't get it, but cool. But now I do. I realize that this is the divine imagination at work, learning to understand itself in these moments of experience as we're experiencing. But now this is where it gets. Okay, we're getting into abstractions here. Certain sort of. This is even a little bit quantum sounding, although I don't mean it to be, but it kind of is, because the source reality. Imagine it in this mind. There's a point. It's described in quantum theory as a unified field, and I'm going to explain. And when I explain this is what the unified field is to me. Jonathan Hagelin, Nassim Haramein, Amit Goswami, and others describe, they're all theoretical physicists, describe the unified field as a field of consciousness. It's alive, it's dynamic, it's pure potential experience, pure potential reality. And that's where I was for a moment. I was in this moment while I was comatose somewhere. Imagine all space, whatever that may really be, the expanse of the universe. And of course, now even cosmologists are realizing that they're starting to discover things that are challenging the current perceived age of the universe, which is about 13.8 billion light years rather. But imagine that as that original primordial singularity, and in that is all the information of the expanse of all this universe, expanse of all time, past, present, and future, all at once. But also those potential realities. Imagine every single probability and possibility all at once. Every possible path of a reality, every thought, every little moment, every secret, every fear, every love. And with that, imagine infinite dimensions. This was my moment of my NDE in a nutshell.
That's quite overwhelming, isn't it? There's a lot in that.
It is. And so there is a lot in that. And it's not something that just happened and then when I came back, it went away. I'm there all the time. The lights got flipped on, if you will. And all it's done is continue to grow. And part of me that is human and is here in this life experiencing, I'm curious. So I want to understand this. So I spend a lot of time with it. And one of the biggest things that I got while I was in the space is understand I didn't really have a sense of my body at all. I mean, I didn't think about being near death or anything like that. I knew where I was. I was very cognizant. I was completely aware of exactly what was, but it was just a thought process taking place. And it was me and all of the divine, but realizing that is the true source of me. So I was in a way just really communicating with myself. But I was communicating with you, I was communicating with the Andromeda Galaxy, I was communicating with the universe itself all at once. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't know how much sense that possibly makes.
It doesn't, but it does. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because there's that connection point, isn't there?
It is. It was just, for me, it was just a thought process. And understand when I say it's the all of everything, people talk about, like my mother passed away back in 1988, probably the most important person in my life, probably the most loving, amazing person I've ever known. There's been a few amazing, don't get me wrong, but my mother was just on another level. It's like, did you see your mother? Did you see, loved ones? It's like, not directly, no. However, the door opened to where I experience that now every day.
Mm.
I communicate. Okay, I communicate with spirits. I have relationships. It isn't like, yes, there's the guidance aspect of it, but these are relationships, these are friendships, these spirits, these guides. They're all on a soul journey, just like we are. They're in a different place in their journey than we are, but they're also journeying, growing, evolving, working through their karmas and their dharmas and whatever's going on in that level of their experience.
Mm.
And this is another thing that's important. And I don't want to diminish anything that our guides do for us, because it's all done with love. But guides are not the source unto themselves. They're not all-knowing any more than you and I are all-knowing, but yet they have the same connection to the source that we do. So in that capacity, they are. But then again, so are you and so am I.
Okay.
And this is the interesting understanding and relationship and dynamic that I've been developing since this near-death experience, because now we're teaching each other. I'm this little human being here on planet Earth, but this NDE just woke up all this stuff to show me what again, not just what I truly am, but what all of this truly is. So in connecting that, I'm also connecting with the guys on these levels. And in some ways, as they're showing me, it's like I'm showing them too. It's a relationship now. And one thing I've learned is, don't disproportionate. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, don't let it be imbalanced. Okay, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but this is a level field. Even from whatever you want to perceive to be God, if you want to see God as a being, there is a certain consciousness, if you will, that is the being, I think, that is described in religion. There's a level of consciousness and truth to that. But realizing that even us little teeny tiny little, almost as some people might say, ant-like little human beings on planet Earth, we're all equals. And this is crazy. Jesus, Krishna, Siddhartha, Horus. I mean, any of those great teachers, and or even just say, let's just take this being God, presents him, herself in front of you, itself. I mean, because God to me is both male and female, but at the same time, neither, because God is God.
Yeah.
I don't believe for a second that this being, if it was manifest in front of you, would say, bow down before me and get down at my feet and pray and it wouldn't be that at all. It'd be, no, come on, we're here, okay, you and me. Let's do this like this. I'm on, person to person. And I think Jesus would be the same way. I think Krishna would be the same way. He's like, get up off your knees. No. That's not what this is about. I'm not a religious person, but I do know a little bit about some of these teachers. One thing Jesus said, and it seems to get lost. I don't hear about this hardly ever, but because so many Christians I know have that disproportionate view of themselves next to Jesus, going, no, Jesus is way, way up here and I'm way down here. I'm barely worthy of the scum on the bottom of his shoes kind of thing. It's like, no, he doesn't want that. That's not what he was teaching us. He was, no, we're all equals here, because he said, you can do as I have done. In fact, you can do even greater. Your potential, what you can capable of, what life here on earth could be, is so much greater than you realize, and you have what I have, is what he was trying to tell us. So when I go through all of this amazing experience and explain and what I've been through and this connection, and that's why I make it so clear, and I said it from the onset, and I'll say it over and over again. I don't know. I think the only thing different about me is I had this crazy near-death experience thing, and it just opened up this door, and I see things like I never imagined before. And instead of closing it when I came back, I no matter what I've been through, and believe me, there's been plenty of opportunities to go back to old ways, but I just won't do it. I'm a very stubborn person that way. But it just keeps growing and evolving, and I'm seeing even just one little person, little being here on Earth, what's really possible for a life, what's really possible in terms of transitioning and shifting. I'm in my 50s, and I'm going through changes and shifts and making discoveries like I did when I was a kid.
Wow.
I never would have imagined this, before, even just days before the NDE. Don't get me wrong, my life was all right. I've been through a lot of stuff, including like drug addiction and fighting, and I've a lot of stuff like that over the years. And but I got to a place before the NDE where I was all right. I was a little lost, I think. I received a great job offer, my dream job, because I've been a promoter all these years. I finally got my big management opportunity in this big awesome club, and but yet it was a funny thing. I remember the drummer of my band, his name is Canine. He's the drummer of all my projects, and he's been one of my dear friends for a couple decades plus. And he says to me after I got this job offer, this is like the week before, I fell out of the tree. Actually, I was living with him at the time. And he says, Rex, he goes, I know, I'm excited for you with this job offer and everything, but something seems off about this. I mean, you don't seem to be celebrating like I thought you would. I mean, you've been waiting for this for so long. I mean, are you okay? I mean, what's going on here? And I just sat down with him. I'm like, I'm really not sure, man. So you're right. This is what I've been waiting for my whole life, and for some reason I'm not excited about it. I don't know why. I'm not excited. I'm going to do it because I don't know what else to do. I'm good at this. I know that this is a great opportunity, and I think this is exactly the kind of venue that supports the kind of shows I like doing. So I'm going to own this and I'm going to make it happen. But at the time, I'm in my mind going, I don't know why I'm not excited. Why can't I? What's missing here?
Do you think you subconsciously knew?
Well, of course. I mean, at that point in time, I think that disconnect was still very much inherent. I'm still very much out here in my head and my ego, and there's a lot of underlying communication that's attempting to be, that's going on here that I just wasn't hearing and understanding.
Yeah.
And just because we don't recognize these vibrational shifts and things going on, these dynamics, these harmonics, if you will, that are happening, doesn't mean they're not still happening and having their impact. I just didn't understand it. I just knew I was having certain feelings, and just things are just lining up, and just everything just seemed off. And as evidence, experientially speaking, spirit, synchronicities, serendipities stepped in, and this whole near-death experience happened, like literally that week of that conversation. And while I just accepted this job, it's all in my book. So a lot of what I'm talking about, because my book is autobiographical. It talks about my life before and my life since, and what's changed. But that's been, and for me, and I want to put it out there like this too. Sometimes people say, well, you're so lucky to have that near-death experience. You're so blessed and fortunate. And I'm like, okay, yes. And this is a term we touched upon already, the blurs.
Yeah.
In fact, if I was Canine who coined this term first, it's the blurs. It's the blessing and the curse.
Yeah.
It's both. I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. But at the same time, no, this has been a really incredibly challenging part of the journey, and in some ways even more challenging than when I was going through the darkest times of my life. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but make no mistake, this past since then, with these newfound sensitivities, being acclimated to this new reality, because my brain, even the mechanistic part of my brain, does not work like it used to at all. I mean, I have headaches now. I've never had headaches before. Even when I used to fight, I never got headaches. I've been hit in the head plenty, and I never got headaches. I get lots of headaches now, especially some of these migraines are crazy. I get crazy brain fog sometimes where I really just can't think. I get so bad I won't even go drive. I just have to be in. Not even I have a headache. I just can't. My brain just won't work. And I'm also, my short-term memory is really terrible. I can't remember names, numbers for anything. If you tell me like a phone number or something like that, or license plate number, you got about 5 seconds and that thing's gone out of my head. And as hard as I try, and I'll say it, and I'll say, blah, 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 and you will. I can sit there and say it. If you read off a number right now, you would hear me go through. I would say it right probably the first 5-6 times. Then little by little, one number at a time, I would start getting it wrong. Pretty easy until it was all wrong. Crazy how that mechanistic part of my brain is working now. But this other side of it, because of this NDE, it's also taught me how to think. So yes, I woke up. This whole thing happened, but it's also taught me a way to think. And I try to explain to people, it's like, first of all, I appreciate, I was, I'm the kind of person, I don't do anything the easy way. At least I didn't. I do now. I listen. I'm very acute with my listening. I don't need to be slapped with a ton of bricks to get a clue these days. But one does not have to have a near-death experience to have this kind of an awakening. One does not have to have something this extreme. And I'm learning more and more that, yes, adversity seems to be the recurring theme of how we grow in this life. And it's a great way to grow. It is. That kind of experience is a phenomenal teacher, but it's not the only teacher. I'm finding that inspiration is an even greater teacher. It's an even greater drive than having to dig deep to get through some brutal tragedy and some brutal hardship that's just taken place in your life, or maybe something you did that you regret that now you have to deal with, that has been, that has tragic consequences, if you will, emotionally and spiritually.
You talked about how you had this moment where you can pinpoint this all happened in your near-death experience. Can you recall anything else about the experience? Like, did you see things? Were you in a place, you talked about how you became one with everything. You were love, you were everything all at the same time. Were you aware that you were potentially dead, or what were you seeing around you, or was that not on the radar at all?
It wasn't on the radar. I knew what was going on. It was like there was an awareness of it, but I wasn't like dwelling on it. It wasn't like there was any like, hey, what's happening? And am I going to go back? It was a thought process. I experienced, if you want to put it in this context, light and dark and everything in between all at once.
Right.
But the essence was pure light. There was, I mean, visually, that's what it was. And I know it seems maybe somebody hearing this is going, that sounds awfully bland, but at the same time, when you stop to think about what I just explained with the all space, all time, and all infinite dimensions
That's
thing.
not bland at all.
No. Anything but.
Yeah.
And that's, the very thing I'm still, working to balance 9 years later. It's that new part of the new reality that I'm still getting acclimated to, because I'm getting so many crazy epiphanies, which is one of the reasons why the second book is taking longer than expected, because I keep getting these epiphanies, these ideas, these realizations, especially when I'm sitting there and writing and I'm in that space because I'm working on it and I'm writing, and then I get this idea and, oh my gosh, I've got to put this in the book too. So it's just amazing. It's a process that just doesn't seem to stop. However, like we were just talking about before we started the interview, as writers, you do have to reach a point with a book. The same as a musician and a composer, with a piece of music, of saying, okay, here it is.
It's done. Yeah.
We need to move to the next project.
Exactly.
And I know I'm going to get to that point, but this is a case too of just letting it be organic, because right now it resonates for me to be doing what I'm doing. I feel like these second two books especially are extremely important, the wording, and I think the heart space has to be right or at its best. What I mean by that is, when I started writing this modern day Book of the Dead, and same with Envisioning God, explaining literally what God is to me now, I started doing it more of in a context of a Tibetan Book of the Dead, or maybe not quite like a Revelations, but maybe even an Egyptian Book of the Dead to some extent, in terms of just writing it in maybe more of a drier kind of a context. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is a beautiful book, but I don't think of it in terms of, how do I put this? It doesn't have a direct human connection, I feel like. I think a lot of people that read it think it's maybe even more abstract in reading it than even some of the ways I'm describing some of the very abstract concepts that I'm maybe describing now. Of course, it's, whatever. Potato. I think what I'm trying to do here that's maybe a little bit different is I'm writing this in the context of wanting people to open up and embrace death as a very, very key and important part of our life experience.
Absolutely.
I want to eliminate that fear. I want to take away the stigmas and these ideals that currently stand around death, and also let's diffuse the mystery a little bit, because it's, again, one thing about this NDE that has shown me is that none of this is beyond us. If we want to know, we can see. It's just, are we really prepared to take in the information that we're going to get when we see? Because most people are not prepared for how understandings like something like this is really going to impact you, and how you start to look at the world around you as a result. It affects everything. This is not a TV show where you just got some brand new little ability and everything else stays static. It doesn't work like that at all. One thing affects everything else. You can't grow on this level and not affect every other part of your life, and even the way you perceive your relationships. What you do with your day. Even how you look at what's going on in the world right now, and all of that stuff is affected by any one of these shifts, because there's such deep core levels of shifting.
Yeah, there absolutely is. Have you found that your fear of death has been eliminated, and did you have a fear of death before your NDE?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I've never had a fear of death.
Yeah.
However, it has changed, and I'll explain. Prior to my NDE, my lack of fear of death was just a lot of it. Of course, again, by the time the NDE happened, I was finally getting into a better place in life and a better place in my head. But I spent a lot of my years in a very dark, angry place. Like I said, I've been on the streets. I've done drugs and done some things I'm really not very proud of. So I think a lot of my lack of fear of death was just me not wanting to be here. Just feeling like anything's better than this. And so take me, fine. I don't care. I'm ready to go. Whatever. I don't even care what's on the other side. Whatever. And I really had that mentality, and that kind of was partly what made me a little bit crazy back in those days. You don't want to deal with a person who has, that kind of especially out there on the streets. You don't want to deal with that kind of person. That's probably one of the most dangerous kinds of people you want to deal with. So even as things move forward and I got past that stuff, and understand this is like 20 plus years ago in my life, that stuff is, but but even then, I still hung on to a lot of that anger and a lot of that stuff from those years of my life. I was ashamed. I carried a lot of guilt from that. It became the more I calmed down and kind of grew and evolved, the more acutely I remembered those things, and the more I understood the ramifications of my actions during those years, and how not only did they impact me and my life path, but also all those around me. Don't get me wrong, nobody was innocent in that world. Everybody that was out there, they had their own dark paths they were on. But I didn't have to play the role that I played, is what I'm saying. I certainly didn't make anything any better by any stretch. So I dealt with a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. So I still had that mentality of, if I have to go right now, I'm gone. I have no problem with that at all, which is partly why I sometimes almost kick myself. Like, how did I? Anyway, I'll get to this in a second. But but I didn't. So my lack of fear of death wasn't necessarily that I saw and I had a peacefulness what was on the other side. It's like I'm over it being here. I just didn't. So fine, let's just go. I'm okay with it. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
But all that, all that anger and all of that stuff that I carried with me, I just didn't know what to do with it. But the NDE happened, and among the many things that I was able to learn as I was starting to process this reality and start to put it into a different kind of a perspective, as I was able to make peace with it and let it go. And now my lack of fear of death is more it's just a result of knowing and just being at peace and being at one with, I guess with the experience, with the divine, the source, all at once. And that's all it is now. So I guess, no, I've never had a fear of death, but the reasoning behind that lack of fear has definitely changed. It's absolutely been massively shifted, because now I'm at peace.
Yeah.
I mean, I get stressed, and some of the things in the world, and in certain, sometimes relationship experiences can be hurtful, and you got to react and go through that. And sometimes, the heart can hurt. We know this, but even through it all, I'm at peace.
Yeah, I love this.
I know it's going to be okay. It's crazy to say, even in the midst of all the craziness in the world right now, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it will be okay.
I don't know how to explain that.
It's such a fascinating answer. Thank you for clarifying that. I think that's really quite incredible. So my question for you is, do you feel like you were always going to have an NDE? Was this part of your plan? So if you had gotten up and you hadn't gone for a run that day, you hadn't climbed the tree that day, do you think it would have been something else that gave you this experience, or why did this happen? And it's a really big question, I know that. Well,
no, it's an easy question. It's kind of referring back to what I was kind of starting to say a few moments ago, is that I've spent so much of my life doing everything the hard way. I'm a super stubborn person. And unfortunately, before the NDE, I was really stubborn about a lot of the wrong things. And since then, I'm sorry, ask the question one more time.
It's whether you think you would have had the NDE.
Oh, no. Okay. Sorry.
It's okay. It's what brain things do.
I do that. It's a TBI thing. But but no, I wouldn't have had. I don't think something else would have happened. I think this is what needed to happen. I think in my case, I needed the absolute most extreme possible thing that could happen to me to happen, short of me actually dying, for me to have a chance of waking up. I think it just came to that point. I can look back and see lots of other opportunities to turn the corner and awaken, and I didn't take any of those opportunities. So I feel like this really was it for me. Right. I don't think it could have been anything else. And if I didn't wake up with this, chances are I might not even be here right now having this conversation with you at all. But just be, okay, fine, you're done, just go.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel a little bit like that as well. I feel like I possibly wouldn't be around if I hadn't had my near-death experience, because I would have been into everything. And I hear this a little bit as well with other experiences about how they think that regardless, they were going to either die or have an experience somewhere in their life.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about when you woke up. So you were in this place, you've had your near-death experience, you're now going to wake up in the hospital and you've got 20-something broken bones, you've got a brain injury, you're really in quite a state. Were you aware of your near-death experience straight away, or what was the process when you immediately woke up?
Okay. When I first woke up, I was not okay. I'm frankly surprised I was able to give the doctors, nurses my name or my brother's name, or because I was a John Doe. I didn't have my ID on me, so the 5 days I was in a coma, nobody knew who I was, and my friends and family, I disappeared. Nobody knew what happened to me. So when I finally woke up and, I somehow gave them my brother's name, I don't know, but I don't remember waking up. I don't probably remember the first, I'm going to guess maybe week after I woke up. It's all very, very spotty and very, very, Do you remember? I don't know. When I was like a little kid, I used to get really high fevers, and when I have these super high fevers, when I get sick as a kid, I have the weirdest dreams, and that's kind of what it felt like to me. Though my memories of that time remind me of when I had these really, really high fevers as a kid, and I had these really weird, odd feeling dreams. And that's what I kind of remember about when I first woke up. Now, as I became more cognizant, and I started to finally understand where I was, why I was there, what was going on, I knew something happened. But at the time, I didn't know anything about near-death experience. I think I've heard the term maybe a handful of times, but I thought nothing of it. I never looked into it before. And so all I know is that it's funny because, of course, I was in the hospital for a full month, and in the trauma ward through most of it. And obviously, I was on drugs. I don't know, whatever Percocets and whatever they had me on at the time. So, but I remember telling people something happened, and trying to explain these feelings of love, and I didn't know where they were coming from. And I'm sure, because nobody remembers me talking about this, because I know when I look in hindsight, they're probably just thinking I was just whacked out on all the pain meds that I was on.
Possibly.
But I do remember like these feelings, like something happened there, and I remember this feeling like I was. And I didn't know how to explain it at the time, but in hindsight, the best way I could describe it was just in that space, as I kept remembering being in that space of pure love. I kept feeling that space of pure mind, pure life itself. I remember feeling all these feelings, but not understanding it. So anyway, I get out of the hospital, spend a month in the hospital, and of course, I ended up with 5 subsequent surgeries that took almost 2 years between that and all my therapies for my broken bones. Yeah. And at some point, and of course, so I was seeing doctors a lot, including my brain doctors, because I was dealing with trying to figure out if there's anything else going on. Why am I getting migraines? Blah blah blah. Of course, they had no idea at that point. As far as they're concerned, the MRIs were looking okay. Okay, whatever. But anyway, there's one point. One of my favorite doctors, I still see him once a year. His name is Dr. Rowland. Amazing guy, brilliant surgeon. But he's one of the few people that really has sat down, and even when I see him now, it's been almost 9 years, and I'm due to go see him probably here pretty soon. But he always takes time to speak with me. He doesn't in and out. I mean, he'll ask me how I'm doing, what's been going on, and how's the next book coming along, and it's really cool what's developed. But he also loves me as a patient because I've stepped up, because he I was against all odds. I just stepped up and I just I came through, and I'm also one of his examples he uses, because he's a teacher as well. He teaches, and he uses me as one of his examples of what can happen when somebody really works hard, with respect to therapy. Because I defied a lot of medical odds on this one. But anyway, I sat with him one day. I think it was just a couple of months after I was out of the hospital. And again, just having one of our conversations, I'm like, Doctor, listen, I've been getting online, and I've been kind of, a lot of these things have been going on with me right now, and I'm getting online, and I'm hearing about the stuff about near-death experience. And I said, in your medical opinion, would you say what happened to me qualifies as a near-death experience? And without hesitation, he goes, yes, most definitely was a near-death experience. Yeah. I'm like, and then at that moment, of course, we talked more, but that was what was the turning point for me to go, epiphany, I had a near-death experience. Yeah. I really, really, really had a neardeath experience. Wow.
Yeah. So how
and then from there, of course, I ran with it. I'm like, okay, now now I'm gonna go into this. Yeah. No more resistance. I gotta dive into this.
Yeah, exactly. That must have made you feel so justified, so validated.
It was. It just was a huge, just, as they say, quantum leap forward, in my growth in that moment. That was that single biggest epiphany that just set all these wheels in motion for so many things that are happening in my life now. That was the moment of epiphany. That was a fork in the road where I'm like, okay, we're going down this path now. Everything I felt, everything I was feeling, yes, that's it. Yes, validation, affirmation, all those things. And I'm just like, yes, this is the path, my chance to reinvent myself and maybe do some things I really always wanted to do, and maybe be the kind of person I always thought I really should be. And even if I may say the kind of person even my mother could be proud of, because for a lot of years I was definitely not that person. Yeah. My poor mother must have been rolling over and over and over in her grave. I can't even tell you how many times. But it's amazing to be in this side of it and be able to look back and say, I could be someone my mother can be proud of, and even somebody I can be proud of finally. And hopefully the friends around me can be like, hey, Rex, way to go, man. You come a long ways, and I feel like that's happening.
Definitely, I can see that as you're talking. You've been on such a journey. The physical side of it alone must have been absolutely enormous. And you talk about intense. The blessing and the curse. That's very, very evident. So it's just fantastic, actually, the way that you're able to talk about this. if somebody's listening to this, what is the one thing that you want them to take away from our conversation today? What is the one thing that you want to share with the world, or the thing that you got out of your experience?
That anything is possible. And I don't mean that in the bad way. We're so used to, and hey, anything's possible. Hey, anything could go wrong, it could go wrong. Well, guess what? If anything can go right, it can also go right. Okay?
Yeah.
Anything's possible, including shifting this entire world. For as bleak as it all looks, and we're seeing it right now, because I don't want to dive into the political stuff, but we have no like leaders in the world, including here in the United States. The United States has always stepped up in these matters, and nobody's stepping up. And right now, it's a very adversarial environment. It's very difficult. But despite it all, we can shift this. And what I'm getting at is I feel like we the people, and I don't mean that just we the people in America, but we the people in the world can do this. And when we do this by starting with, and this is kind of a Buddhist, sort of a mentality of, you got to start with the self. You've got to love the self. You've got to grow the self. You've got to put be in a place where you can be strong, not only just for your own purpose and path, but if you're going to help others, you got to be strong for others. You can't go and help somebody else when you're weak yourself. I mean, you're liable to fumble and fall, and then maybe they fumble and fall too. I don't want to get into all those dynamics, but my point is this. I say it in my book. The more of us that are living the life of our dreams, the closer we come to living in the world of our dreams. And if we're going to shift this world, that's where it's going to be, is with every one of us doing exactly what you and I are doing right now, exploring, learning to understand all of what we are, what we're doing, what this all means, and also what's really possible. Like I said earlier, I mean, and I believe Jesus is right. But the possibilities that exist for humanity is just truly just endless. The ceiling here, I mean, we don't have any idea what the ceiling here really is. I mean, not only are we evolving spiritually to understand this as above, so below thing that we hear in Wicca, the genetics, the DNA, it's also changing and evolving along with our spiritual growth. So this is all going to continue to evolve as we evolve, and especially if we're given the opportunity for us, especially as a collective consciousness, worldwide consciousness, to grow together on these paths. So all of us can be free to be who and what we choose to be, with the one caveat being is we don't hurt each other over it. But it all starts with every one of us, and if we can do it, because what happens when you're growing, evolving, and you're thriving through love versus say thriving through selfishness. Of course, you see it in the business world today. If the mentality is you get what you can get it however you can get it, and it's all about profit, and that's just the end of it. If somebody else gets hurt, well, that's just this is kind of how that process works, and you just kind of accept that. As they say in that business, some days, one day you eat the bear, the next day the bear eats you. But in this reality, when you're doing this through love, you're doing this for your own personal growth. What is one of the biggest things people in the space want to do, especially when they are thriving? They want to help others. They want to bring other people up. And I don't mean that putting yourself on the line and get taken advantage of because you're such a nice person. But I mean seeing an opportunity, maybe in a conversation, maybe just like this. You've got a stranger, and I've done this before, having some conversation. Maybe they're in a point of struggle, and you see an opportunity to say something to them that might help them through whatever they're going through so they can take their next step on their path. Those kinds of things start happening on these very interpersonal levels all around us in our relationships and all over the world. Not only are we raising ourselves up, but we raise each other up. And all of a sudden, the rest of all of this becomes obsolete because we got this. And I think we're already seeing a little bit of that taking place with this coronavirus thing because, well, it isn't the leaders that are making the difference in all this. It is all of the people in all of the countries that are making the difference. Here in America, it's the frontliners. It's the states. It's the communities that are stepping up here. And I can't say what's going on. I mean, you're in New Zealand, right?
I'm in New Zealand, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm hoping, New Zealand seems to, at least over here in America, we are under the impression that New Zealand is a great place to live. So I'm hoping you guys are doing great over there. But I know there's a lot of parts of the world that are having a difficult time in this, and it's going to be all on us. And I think around the world, people, civilians, what we call the normal people, common folk, we're the ones. And of course, we're not so common when it comes right down to it. Get to know us individually. There's nothing common about any of this, but this is where it's going to happen. And I think if there's going to be a big shift, this is going to be where it's at. There's a lot of stuff we need to be cognizant of up on top. Again, don't want to dive into that today, but I just want, again, through it all, anything's possible. We can shift this darn thing. No matter how bleak and difficult it all looks right now, just own your power. Start with your own life, your family, friends, community. Let's grow this thing together. If we're all doing this together, some point in all, we're all gonna like raindrops in a pond. All all those all those ripple patterns are going to go out and interfere with one another, and they're going to cross and intersect and have this dynamic, beautiful pattern of intersections taking place. And that's, that can happen in a negative way, but it also, that spiral can go upward just as fast too.
Totally. I love it. Anything is possible. And it comes back to love as well. We've got to start a love. Anything's possible. Wow.
That's the one common
fantastic.
thread that we all share is love. Every world religion is based in love. Even atheists, people that claim to be atheists, they have love in their life. They love somebody. So love is the one common denominator we all share, and that is how we're going to be able to come together and shift this thing. That's going to be the key. That is the key.
Definitely. Rex Finfgeld, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. We really appreciate your insight, appreciate you sharing your experience, and I will put all your links to your website, your book series. Very, very interested in finding out more about that. Put that in the links to the show. And again, thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast show. If you've enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, tell people about it. I'd love to get these messages out there. Don't forget you can also pick up your VIP access pass for additional content at patreon.com/Kirsty Salisbury. You can connect with us via the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page, and I look forward to catching you for another episode soon.